Welcome back. We've been told by the government to wear masks, social distance, and practice safe, healthy hygiene during the coronavirus. But as we've seen, not all of our leaders practice what they preach. And students are taking note of politicians violating the rules. Joining me to discuss is Eduardo Neret, a digital reporter for Campus Reform. Hey, Eduardo, it's good to see you. As we know, school now officially back in session, whether it's in person or virtually. And I guess you found a few students to talk to about politicians violating their own rules. I want to play some of that and get your response on the other side. Here's this.
We shouldn't be shocked when we see people who are in power think they're above the law or think that they're above getting sick or anything like that.
How much of the rules that they're enforcing at the top do you think are really about health at this point? Do you think it's more about controlling people, keeping things shut down? I mean, talk to me about, what you think the bigger picture is.
Me personally, I believe it's like the health aspect of like staying 6 feet, always wearing your mask.
They probably just think they're above the law because you've ever been in like a place of power, you're like, oh, it doesn't affect me because I don't have it.
All right, kind of above the law there. What'd you think of the responses you heard?
Well, you heard the students, Emma, and they've been taking notice of people like Nancy Pelosi and her hair salon incident, of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo being pictured in public without a mask, and they're upset by it. They say they want their leaders to lead by example, and ultimately a word that a lot of the students use to me is hypocrisy, hypocritical, hypocrites. And when you look at what students have wanted during the pandemic, as we have at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, you wouldn't be surprised by this. So a lot of the polling has shown that students want to return to campus. For example, a recent poll by College Pulse showed that over 75% of college students would go back to campus if they were reopened, and over 2/3 would even be willing to take in-person classes if allowed. So if you're a student and you feel that way, and then you turn on the TV, you go on social media, and you see our very own leaders violating the rules they set for everyone else, of course it's going to upset you, because what this is what Pelosi and Cuomo and others are saying is masks and lockdowns for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, and if you're paying that college tuition, you want to get your full money's worth, I'm sure, which includes actually being on campus and getting all the benefits of campus life as well. And Eduardo, I saw you were on campus. You managed to find a few students there. What did they tell you about being back in that environment?
It's a lot different than it has been in the past. They're not even fully doing all of their classes in person. Campuses, as I've told you a couple times, seem to be dead for the most part, and that isn't changing. And of course, that's varying from campus to campus. And it's important to keep in mind in the very same issue of, Pelosi and Cuomo being out in public and sort of ending these lockdowns. That doesn't mean every place can reopen 100% to full capacity. And even the students understand that. The students I talk to say, look, we're not asking for things to be back the way they used to be, but we're trying to little by little. And so it's insulting for us to see our very own leaders not be able to follow this. And, one student even mentioned to me, look, Pelosi and Cuomo, they don't have the financial troubles that a lot of us have. They're not facing the same unemployment, the same financial troubles that the rest of the country is facing. And so when you consider that as well, it's even more hurtful that Pelosi and Cuomo think they can go out in public, but not these students, especially when these students, I think, for the most part, have been very understanding of the changing rules of being on campus with masks, of social distancing. They're doing what they can, and they want their leaders to do the same.
Yeah, I noticed everyone you spoke to wearing that mask, and you're, of course, 6 feet away with your little mic setup there, which I always comment on and appreciate. But I also want to talk to you about another question that you asked the students in regards to Speaker Pelosi's earlier comments about a suggestion for Joe Biden to skip the presidential debates. Watch this.
So Nancy Pelosi recently said Joe Biden should skip the debates with Donald Trump. I'm going to play you a video here of her remarks and see if we can get your reaction.
Don't tell anybody I told you this. Especially don't tell Joe Biden. I don't think that there should be any debates. I do not think that the President of the United States has comported himself in a way that anybody should, and that has any association with truth, evidence, data, and facts.
So what do you think about that? Do you agree with her? Do you agree with Nancy Pelosi? Do you think Biden should not debate Trump?
Everything she says is pretty legit. How, he's probably going to lie and not be dignified.
No, I don't think so, because it's part of our democracy, free speech.
All right, so at least in those two sound bites that we played, we got two different responses. What was the overall ideas that students expressed with you there?
There were a few who agreed with Pelosi, but I have to say I was surprised because the overwhelming majority wanted Biden and Trump to debate. They're saying it's very important to our democracy. They want to hear both sides, and I think that's encouraging. With everything we've covered on most college campuses across the country, there isn't that room for the debate. There isn't that room to exchange ideas. And so when you hear some students out there say, you know what, I may disagree with President Trump, I may be supporting Biden, but I think they need to debate, that's a very encouraging sign. Some students even even went as far to say is, if Biden skips the debates with Trump, that would be weak of him. We don't want a commander-in-chief who can't even present his argument to the American public. So it'll be interesting to see if the rest of the American people think that way, if they think what these college students think, that these debates need to happen. But again, like these students said, I think it's good for democracy. I think it's good for our process for us to be able to hear both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. One question, though, that's come up is whether or not people are actually undecided at this point, or as to how influential these debates could even be to those voters. And I want to ask you about those college students particularly. Have they kind of made up their mind as to who they're voting for, or are they still waiting to figure it out?
A lot of the polling shows that college students do lean towards Biden, which is not a surprise. But I think the interesting thing that we're going to see, and we're going to have to see, is are these college students going to turn out? They have, in the past, typically had a horrible turnout in terms of showing up to the polls and actually voting. One thing is to say that you support a candidate. Another thing is to actually show up and vote. In terms of undecided, I think it is interesting. There's always one or two students I talk to every time I make one of these videos who they have a position going into it. Maybe that it's anti-Trump. Maybe it's pro-Biden. And when I give them the facts, when I talk to them about the subject of whatever video I'm making, a lot of them take a step back and they say, wow, I didn't know that about President Trump, or I didn't know he had accomplished that. That's really interesting, and I'm going to do my own research. So there could be a lot of undecided college students out there, and at the end of the day, that's what we want them to do. We want them to do their own research and come to their own conclusions about who they support and why they support them.
Yeah, in the meantime, you're getting some of that information out there. We appreciate it. Eduardo Neret joining us this morning. Thanks, Eduardo.
Thanks so much, Emma.
You got it. Still ahead.